Yep, you heard that right. We're getting tier 4 items in Smite for Season 9. This is my second news video on all the stuff that's been revealed at HRX. Check out the first video on all the updated relics and tier 3 relics that are new if you haven't already. That'll be linked down below. If you're hyped for Season 9, then smash the sub button as I'll be covering everything you need to know. But without further ado, let's jump into these tier 4 items, or glyphs as they're called in Smite. The other big new feature for Season 9 is glyph items. These are essentially tier 4 items but with some unique rules to them. These additional upgrades on top of some of the most iconic tier 3 items, so it's not every item in the game, I'll state that now, there's only one per role. And they do not provide any extra stats, but instead provide a unique passive effect that stacks with current item stats or other passive effects. These are priced at a relatively low cost of 600 gold to give flexibility to players about when to get them, so they're generally not going to be, like when you're upgrading from tier 2 to tier 3, that's usually like 1,000 gold or more, they're not going to be quite that expensive. Stats are often super important in the early game, so opting into a glyph early could be a pretty heavy trade-off, but they do provide unique powerful effects that could definitely help swing a game. There's no level restriction or amount restriction on glyph items. Players can get as many as their class allows and get them as early or late as they choose. So that's pretty interesting. So let's get into them. So Heartward Amulet is the first one. This is the kind of Guardian option, I guess. Or I guess I should say the support option, not the Guardian option necessarily. They seem to be more role designed. So the first upgrade, Amulet of Silence, it gains a stack each time an enemy casts an ability within 40 units of you, and at 5 stacks, your next basic attack against an enemy god will silence them for 1.5 seconds. And this effect can only occur every 45 seconds. So this is pretty interesting. As a support, you're potentially going to be in your backline, they're getting dived or whatever, your carries by the jungler and the solo, and they're casting abilities near you a lot. You could potentially get a really clutch silence off with this. Silence is a really strong CC. Hitting a basic attack with a Guardian specifically, which is what this is going to be built on a lot of the time, could potentially be a little bit difficult, since most Guardians are melee, but some ranged Guardians could make use of this, and potentially other classes could get this. It's not limited to Guardians, I don't think, but generally the stats obviously are better for a support kind of build. You'd be forgoing some pretty efficient self stats to get this item just for the passive, so I think it would more so be built on supports. And then Amulet of the Stronghold, which is the other branching upgrade, 20% of your physical protections are converted to magical protection. So this one's pretty interesting, it allows you to go very heavily into a physical build and then right near the end of the game, or not even necessarily near the end, because you can get these whenever you want. It's not like starter items where you have to wait until late game or anything like that. You can just stack physical protections and then buy this upgrade, and you're still going to have a pretty healthy amount of magical. So moving on to Breastplate of Valor, we first have Breastplate of Determination. Each time you are hit by an ability, gain a stack of 5 protections that corresponds to the damage type you were hit by, with a max of 4 of each type. So I assume that means 4 stacks, not 4 protections, because you get 5 per stack. Bit confusing wording there, so I assume 20 protections maximum. Once you reach max stacks of both kinds, gain a burst of 20% movement speed and double your protections gained by this effect for 8 seconds, after which all stacks are removed. You heard it in my voice there. I thought it was going to double your protections entirely, and I was about to but yeah, it's just doubling from this item, so it'll double from 20 to 40, and then you also get a 20% movement speed bonus. So obviously this is for those divers, solo laners, maybe junglers if you're going for a more super tanky jungler build, but this will mostly be a solo laner item. You're just diving the backline, getting more movement speed to chase people down, getting tanky, that kind of stuff. Pretty generic, just good stats there. And then we have Breastplate of Vigilance, the other upgrade. When your ultimate ability has finished casting, you provide an aura in a 40 unit range around you, reducing basic attack damage from enemies by 30%. Interesting. So this is sort of like they've done with the relics. If you watch my recent video on those, they're generally doing them as one is a big boy upgrade of the original relic and one's a wild card. They did the same thing for starter items, and they're doing it for this as well. They seem to have found a nice formula there where it fits quite nicely to add niche effects into the game like this, reducing basic attack damage. And so even if you're going into a Breastplate of Valor, for your laning phase or whatever, if you find out the enemy team are giving your team a real problem with a Kali jungle and an ADC or something like that, you can pick this up. We have in Venom Deathbringer, so we had some data mining on the Deathbringer changes, and I've kind of already pre-seen them, or at least a little bit of what they're going to be, and they seem really interesting and pretty strong, so effectively, so how these work is the original item is still the same, remember that, so you're still going to get the original, how Deathbringer normally was, but then you pay 600 gold for these effects, and they're basically Poison Star and Malice on top of Deathbringer, and those 2 items have been removed from the game. So in Venom Deathbringer is going to give you a mini Poison Star effect, and Malicious Deathbringer is going to give you a mini Malice effect, which, keep in mind, I'm saying mini there. These don't seem to be as strong as the original ones. I believe Malice was 3 seconds off of your abilities, and Poison Star was more stat reduction than this. So they are a toned down version of the original passive. But it is still pretty cool that you can sort of have crit builds be allowed to not necessarily have to build, 3-4 crit items to get all the effects they want. They can get a lot of different effects on this Deathbringer. It does, however, mean that this is definitely an auto build in every crit build, obviously. This is going to be an insanely strong item and probably catapult crit even further into the meta. And so we have the item aimed at junglers. These aren't like bouncer rolls, but they clearly are generally aimed at, one type of role. So you had like Heartward Amulet for supports. You have Breastplate of Valor for solo laners, that kind of stuff. And then you have JOTUNNS Ferocity, which is aimed at junglers, but can be built on anyone. So JOTUNNS Ferocity, the first upgrade. Your next basic attack marks an enemy god. If you hit a marked enemy or the marked enemy hits you with a basic attack or ability, it gains 1 stack. Each stack provides 2% increased damage towards the marked enemy, stacking up to 10 times. So it's sort of like you kind of duel them in a way. This is pretty cool. I like this. So when you're engaging on the backline or something, like you mark the enemy mage and you effectively sort of like initiate a little bit of a mini duel with them, kind of like Ravenult was at release, if anyone was around for that, where you kind of meant to be targeting each other and ignoring everyone else because you have these increased damage towards them and stuff like that. This is a really cool design. I like this a lot. And then we have JOTUNNS Vigor, which is if you drop beneath 40% health, you gain 10% movement speed and 40% ability lifesteal for 5 seconds. That is really strong. Can occur every 15 seconds, so you can definitely get this off multiple times a fight. Realistically. So we all know that Pele passive is really strong, and 40% is definitely more than Pele gets, if I'm not mistaken on that. I highly doubt Pele still gets more than this. Maybe at release she got this much, but that is a lot of stats there. Both these JOTUNNS upgrades look really good. I'd be happy as like a jungler to go any of these, obviously as an ability-based jungler. And the final one here, we have Calamitous Rod of Tahuti and Nimble Rod of Tahuti. So the first one, successfully hitting an enemy god with an ability calls down a meteor that lands after 1.5 seconds, dealing 100 plus 30% power scaling damage in a 15 unit radius. 15 units, if I remember correctly, is a Chronos one, so not a really large radius particularly, and it can only occur every 90 seconds. So this is just cool. I like this a lot. I really like items that kind of do something in the game. They aren't just like a bundle of stats, and you have to kind of think about when you're going to use them, and they have like an effect like this. Like, this is going to be really cool to just see like your mage proccing off meteors on people, and I think it's just gonna be really fun to have in the game. And as I said before, I think, to be honest, this is probably just gonna be an auto build in mage builds now. Like you would auto build Deathbringer in crit builds, and to be honest, maybe you auto build JOTUNNS on ability based junglers, because these just seem insanely strong. Like, I think you're always gonna want a Calamitous Rod of Tahuti in almost any mage build that's ability based. And then there's Nimble Rod of Tahuti, of course. For every 40 magical power you have, you gain 2% attack speed. So this is specifically for magical ADCs there, obviously. This is potentially really strong though, because, I mean, how much magical power are you going to have in a late game build? Maybe 600 or so? If you're building attack speed, maybe a little bit less, so we'll say 400. That's a clean 20% attack speed increase just on this, and you also have all the other Rod of Tahuti benefits, the insane damage it provides and things like that. And to be honest, 400 magical power is probably a lowball estimate. You could realistically get 500 or 600, I think, in a late game build. And you know what, just because I won't mention it in any other videos, I'm just going to mention this crit adjustments thing at the end of this video for anyone that cares. Basically, they're kind of adjusting the way crit works to be less RNG based. So it's finally time for some major changes to crit. As much as it's been discussed, we chose not to rework crit into something entirely different. Yeah, I was kind of hoping they would, but this is a pretty interesting change. I kind of like the way they've done this, so definitely hear it out. Critical strikes are a concept in many genres and types of games, and the random chance for big DPS is just fun on a primal level. I don't know about that one. It is fun for the people doing it, it's hell for the people receiving it, so you gotta find a balancing act there. You can't just say this is fun for people using it, so we're gonna add it to the game. You have to think about how it feels for the other 9 people in the lobby. However, we did agree it could use some balancing and feels tuning. Yeah, absolutely. We have adjusted the mathematical systems behind crit to no longer be truly random, and instead it will now have the following effects. This is a nerf in many ways, so crit items will be adjusted with that in mind in the item section further down below. Interesting. So Deathbringer being so strong, crit is overall being nerfed based on the mechanics of it, so it kind of makes sense. Critical damage multiplier has been reduced to 2 ooh, interesting. So the critical damage multiplier has been reduced from 2 times to 1.75 times. So that's just a direct nerf to crits. They're no longer as strong. To be honest, I don't like this purely for like, neatness' sake. Crits in most games do double damage or maybe like 50% more damage. I don't really see them often do 75% more damage. It's a little bit weird, but for balancing concerns, I'm willing to overlook that. The critical strike chance algorithm has changed from full random to pseudo RNG to allow for more consistent critical strike chance over multiple hits. It will become more likely to get a normal hit, so a non-crit, the longer a crit streak occurs, and more likely to get a crit the longer a miss streak occurs. Yeah, so basically if you're not critting at all, you get more and more chance to crit, and if you're critting a lot, you get less and less chance. Critical hit sprees and critical hit miss sprees are both less likely on the extreme ends. Yeah, so it's effectively reining in the RNG. They're not removing it whatsoever, but they're making it so, if someone with 5% crit is very unlikely to get, 3-4 crits in a row, which could potentially happen before. Again, it's obviously still unlikely, but it could happen. And then obviously people never getting crits, which is me when I play Mercury, just never getting crits when you have like 50% crit. Hopefully you'll get them a bit more often. So yeah, I like this change. Going to completely removing crit could have been good, but it's also a large risk. If they remove it and don't add a cool system to kind of replace it is a bit kind of sucks. So I kind of like that they've gone for a more like cautious approach here. It does make a bit of sense. But yeah, that's the bonus crit changes plus all the tier 4 items that we're going to be seeing in season 9. These look really interesting, and obviously I'm pretty sure they're just an auto build, to be honest, which is why I don't really like that there isn't like a large variety of them. I think there should be at least like 3 per role that you can choose from. A bit like starters, you know, I don't like that you're just probably going to auto build these. Aside from Deathbringer, obviously, you're not going to auto build Deathbringer on every hunter because you need to be building crit for that to want to work. So if you're not going to crit build, you're obviously not going to want it. But I think all the rest of them are just generically like really good. And you'll probably just want to build them in every single build. So interesting design choice here. You know, adding these on top of like starter items, which are already a big part of your build. We'll see how it goes though. I think it will potentially be better if they added more of these. Maybe they're going to do that over time, you know, maybe they're introducing 5 to kind of like test the waters and stuff like that, and then throughout the season they'll add more. We'll have to see. But yeah, subscribe for more news videos coming soon. I'm going to be covering everything season 9 and doing PTS and all that kind of stuff, so definitely subscribe to the channel. I'm hoping to bring you guys as much content as I can on that in the future, and I will catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.